warm Detroit welcome.
You know, usually this thing is filled with all kinds of scholars and others who want to come and pontificate and discuss the theory of Beatledom. That's not what this is, so I'm glad to see you folks here. So we're going to do this. It's a story that I wrote. I actually wrote this story 30 years ago when it was the 20th anniversary. I sort of updated it, and we have put this library show together that we're going to do most of it right now. Please be ready.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Last night I said these words to my girl. You know you never even try, girl. Come on, 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 come on. Please, please me, oh yeah, like I please you. You don't need me to show the way, love. Why do I always have to say love? Come on, 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 come on. Please me, oh yeah, like I please you. I don't wanna stop complaining, but you know it's always ringing my heart, in my heart. I do all the pleasing with you, it's so hard to reason with you. Oh yeah, why do you make me blue? Last night I said these words to my girl. You know you never even try, girl. Come on, 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 come on. Please, please me, oh yeah, like I please you. Me, oh yeah, like I please you. Me, oh yeah, like I please you.
One, 2, 3, go!
She was just 17, and you know what I mean. And the way she looked was way beyond compare. How could I dance with another? Oh, when I saw her standing there. Well, she looked at me, and I could see that before too long I fell in love with her. I'll never dance with another. Oh, when I saw her standing there. My heart went boom as I crossed that room, and I held her hand in mine. Oh, we danced through the night. We held each other tight. Then before too long, I fell in love with her. I'll never dance with another. Oh, when I saw her standing there. Since I saw her standing there. Since I saw her standing there.
And you can sing along to these things too. This is Normally you don't read along with the presenters in the Humanities Center, but here you can sing and you can dance too. The phone rang and knocked me off the hook. I slowly turned my head and glanced at the clock. Through the darkness, I could make out a red number 5 digit in the corner of the room. It had an eerie glow about it. I rolled my head back into the pillow, closed my eyes, and quickly faded into a misty, milky dream. It was 1963, and I was 10 years old. All I cared about was making my lip curl more like Elvis's in the mirror or posing like Roger Maris at the Clayton Little League. Even the briefest meditation on those years transports me back to a time that was so different than today. When I think back and I realize how much things have changed, I'm not certain why they've changed, but connecting the dots, I can see how they did.
You'll never know how much I really love you. You'll never know how much I really care. Listen, do you want to know a secret? Do you promise not to tell? Whoa, whoa, closer. Whisper in your ear. Do what to say the words you long to hear. I'm in love with you. Listen. Do what to. You want to know a secret? Do what to. You promise not to tell. Whoa, whoa, closer. Do what to. Let me whisper in your ear. Do what to. Say the words you long to hear. I'm in love with you.
It was a time when people in most homes in Detroit and around the surrounding suburbs were starting to think that it might be a good idea at night or when you left the house to lock the door. A time when folks were still shopping at independent stores like Mike's on Mack for clothes or Pete's Groceries with his now nostalgic sign, "Home deliveries available." Now you can't even get Pete's friggin' grandson to go grab you something from aisle 3. This was also before Macomb County opened Michigan's first enclosed mall. In those days, the concept of a mall seemed like something right out of the Jetsons. A time before people in our neighborhood could even imagine something as far-fetched as our local newspaper boy making historical, sorrowful headlines. A headline that read, "Michigan's first boy killed in Vietnam."
That boy took my love away. He'll regret it someday. But this boy wants you back again. This boy wouldn't mind the pain, would always feel the same. This boy wants you back again.
We thought it important to make enough money back then to keep the grand old American dream illusion alive. Of course, even that idea is ridiculous and hard to conjure up in this new world order where we all live. Nevertheless, the world was about to break loose with a bang followed by a roar of protest, changing the future, changing our lives.
I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I don't care too much for money, money can't buy me love. I give you all I got to give if you say you love me too. I may not have a lot to give, but what I got I'll give to you. I don't care too much for money, money can't buy me love, can't buy me love. Everybody tells me so, can't buy me love. No, 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 no. Say you don't need no diamond rings and I'll be satisfied. Tell me that you want the kind of things the money just can't buy. I don't care too much for money, money can't buy me love, can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love.
This was a time when my older brother Tommy could be heard constantly singing Luke Christie's silly songs around the house. Now that was a part of those times that drove me nuts. I couldn't stand Luke Christie's shrieking voice. It seemed to cut right through to my heart and soul every time I heard it or hear it. It still to this very day makes what's left of my hair curl every time I think about it. I mean, if I ever hear again, lightning striking, striking again and again and again. Lightning strike again and 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 again. I'm going straight for my brother's skinny ass throat. And if he isn't available, I'm going after his father's skinny ass throat. We had different fathers. For taking part in helping to create that kid's screechy voice. And in my insanity, or should I say my temperamental fantasy, I might struggle our mother for birthing the boy with the skinny ass throat. God! I hated that music so much that I remember running into the church bathroom while attending Sunday school and praying, I was Lutheran back then, and praying to God to send the world some new music. I remember thinking that the church bathroom was the closest place I could get to God, to ask him a question that I was sure the pastor would never condone.
She came in through the bathroom window, protected by a silver spoon. Now she sucks her thumb and wanders by the banks of her own lagoon. Didn't anybody tell her? Didn't anybody see? Sundays on the phone to Monday, Tuesdays on the phone to me. Oh yeah. She said she'd always been a dancer, 16 clubs a day. Though she thought I knew the answer, 'cause I knew but I could not say. So I quit the police department, found myself a steady job. Though she tried her best to help me, she could steal but she could not rob. Didn't anybody tell her? Didn't anybody see? Sundays on the phone to Monday, Tuesdays on the phone to me. Oh yeah.
Well, I found myself doing that a lot back then. Running into the church bathroom to pray, not running into the bathroom like Lou or Charlie or me now. Now we're always in the bathroom. That's a joke. It's okay to laugh. Well, it's not really a joke. Lou's going to tell us about urology and the finer points of medicine. So we're at a medicine talk today. So, well, I always do Jack Benny because I love him. Well, I was a pretty gullible for the young people. He was on a TV thing and thank you, Judith, for school. Well, I was a pretty gullible kid, I guess. One who was always ready to take a person at his word. So when Pastor Shem announced once during Sunday school lessons that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, I was right on top of that, believing it would take into account everything from red, sore, sunburned necks to new music. It never worked with the sunburns, but I remained highly optimistic. Anyway, my brother kept up with this Lou Christie stuff, and I kept up with my praying, and the times were right for something positive to take place, especially after our popular young president had been assassinated that fall. The morale is not what you would call high in my neighborhood. Despite this, I was young and my world was still alive with possibility. It was still normal to have something as simple as two parents. And I had boundless energy and loved so many things except Lou Christie. And I remember how back then it was okay to watch a lot of television. Of course, there were only 5 channels. There's 190 today, and you have to pay for it. It also used to be cool to start smoking at 11 or 12. God, I only had a year or two to wait. And do you remember Captain Jolly? If you do, say yes. That's not my story. I'm off script.
There's a cough.
There was a cough? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Edward. Captain Jolly. Now that was a fine character for kids to look up to. An old, bearded, toothless sailor.
In the town where I was born lived a man who sailed the sea, and he told us of his life in the land of submarine. And so we sailed into the sun till we found the sea breeze. Giant blue sea breeze, whoa, in a yellow submarine.
Come on!
We all
Captain, Captain. Full speed ahead. Boatswain, boatswain. Captain, Captain, Captain. Full speed ahead. Number 9, number 9.
We all live in a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine, a yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine. We all live in a yellow submarine. I mean, what do kids have to look up to nowadays? SpongeBob, Xbox, Instagram, selfies, Snapchat. What? And when the hell, why in the hell is a sponge wearing square pants, or pants even? I wonder. I do wonder so. Well, maybe that wasn't so bad. This was also a time when it was cool to play baseball all day long in vacant lots, and a time when the Marinos, the tough guy bastards over on Lake Boulevard, didn't stand half a chance to be cool or to ever play baseball with us. And hey, how about the Schwinn Stingray bike? Do you remember them? Now you remember that, Tom, or you do? Okay. I'm going to check with everybody in the audience. There'll be questions after and during. It's a test. Wow, what a bike! Now, on that kind of a bike that had high-rise handlebars and a sissy bar in the back and a long white banana seat, on that kind of bike you could do a wheelie. Imagine a damn wheelie right there in front of your parents. Always scare the shit out of them. Good for a laugh with the guys.
So why don't we do it in the road? 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 No one will be watching us. Why don't we do it in the road?
Kids don't do wheelies anymore, they do coke. But in 1963, something started to change and stir. When I think back to those days, I still believe that God was actually answering my bathroom prayers. Driving to my uncle's house with my parents and my brother, and for some sort of Christmas celebration. Anyway, my brother and I were sitting in the back seat of the Dodge Polara. My brother asked our parents to put the radio on, which was a custom, not by now, because of my brother's innate love of bad music. So we're driving down Gratiot Avenue, and my brother starts up with singing a cacophony of crap again. But this time it's a stupid song called Walk Like a Man. Walk like a man, walk like a man, walk like a man, walk like a man. She's a man, I'm not a man. She's like a man, I'm not a man. She's like a man. Go away, I'm no good. For you. Not a man, Sherry, Sherry baby. Like a man, walk like a man. I'm not a man. Who is this Frankie Valli ass? He sounds like Lou Christie, but he's worse. I then shrieked at the top of my lungs, what is it with these shrieky singers all of a sudden? They sound like someone is squeezing their nuts! Well, as you might imagine, my mother reached around and backhanded me, and I have to say it was okay back then to hit your kids. Very easy, right? See, he wouldn't laugh that hard if he didn't know. You teachers know. So what is it with these shrieking singers? And I don't know. Well, I just got caught up in that domestic violence. Well, as you might imagine, my mother reached around and backhanded us for me anyway, for my vulgar language, but that didn't stop me from jumping up into the front seat, turn on the radio station, and that instant a fight broke out in the back of the Polera. That was, by today's standards, pretty roomy, but not enough for two of us. My mother turned around and yelled, "Cut it out now before I belt the both of you a good one." I told her that I hated that music, and she said that it wasn't so bad. In fact, her and Dad kind of liked it. I mumbled under my breath as my brother shot a big shit-eating grin my way, but as we drove on, the station I punched in stayed on, and that's another concept, and nobody seemed to notice. Then it happened. Jesus had answered my bathroom prayers. The radio blasted out, "I want to hold your hand!"
1, 2, 3.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. Oh, please say to me, you let me be your man. And please say to me, I wanna be your man. Whoa. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
I thought, what a great way to celebrate Christmas. A miracle right there in my parents' car. And whoever said that a miracle could not happen in a Dodge? In a
I
Dodge.
can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
When my brother finally shut up with his shrieky, squirrely voice, I knew a genuine miracle had occurred. All of a sudden, I felt alive, and that felt good. I, like everyone else, immediately wanted more songs, millions more. In fact, I thought this was and had to be the first time that we ever really heard true music. Yeah, yeah, yeah!
1, 2.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. You think you lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. It's you she's thinking of, and she told me what to say. She said she loves you, and you know that can't
you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be glad. With a love like that, you know you should be glad.
Well, that was when the countdown began. That was the end of December. And the word was that the Beatles would actually appear on the Ed Sullivan Show sometime in the early part of the new year. Sullivan had always had a really big shoe, but this one was destined to be landmark. History now notes that, but why not Sullivan? After all, he brought us Senior Wences, Topio Gigio, the dancing, singing mouse, and Dancing Bears, didn't he? Well, the date was finally released, February 9th, 1964. I couldn't wait. The world couldn't wait. Even my brother had given up the Lou Christie, Frankie Valli rubbish as we traded 4 seasons for Fab Four. Our world was transformed. A newspaper once noted that the Beatles changed the way we dressed, the way we wore our hair, and the way we loved. Finally, it came Sunday night, 8 p.m., ready, set, go. I can still see Ed Sullivan on our black and white TV as he said those now famous words that sent my world in motion. Now, yesterday and today, our neighbor theater has been jammed with newspapermen and photographers from all over the nation, and these veterans agree with me that never has this city witnessed the excitement stirred by these youngsters from Liverpool who call themselves the Beatles. Now, you're going to be entertained by them right now and again in the second half of our show. Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles!
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll run home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, in hopes that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving, I'll listen to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true.
Come on, Eddie!
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll run home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving, I'll listen to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. All my loving, ooh, all my loving, I will send to you.
Girls in the audience screamed. I screamed, I swear. I heard the neighbor girl screaming through the closed window. My hair grew. My patience grew. My world breathed in deep, alive. When Monday morning arrived, I had my hair so watered down to keep my bangs flat on my forehead that I caught a really bad cold. My mother blamed the Beatles. I thank God. We must have acted out these scenes 100 times. We ran around the
playground and afternoon recesses in grammar school. We had our make-believe group, paper guitars, and the whole bit. A guy named George played George. Another friend named Jeff was Paul, and this real scuzzy guy named Ringo, that rhymes with shingle, played Ringo because his name was the closest match we could get. And I played John. I could only play John. I remember running around the playground playing 8 Arms to Hold.
Help, I need somebody, help.
Not just anybody,
Help,
you know I need someone. When I was young,
when I was young,
younger than today,
I never needed
anybody's help in any way.
now.
But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured.
I know, but
Now I find to change my mind, open up the door. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down. Do appreciate your being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please, please help me, help me, help me. We even gave girls our milk money to chase us around, just like the real Beatles. Almost. Through 1,000 lunches, we would laugh and be witty, just like the Fab Four, or so we thought. We practiced what we thought were witty one-liners with each other. We dreamt about making enough money on our newspaper route to buy authentic Beatle wigs. And we paid girls in our class to scream whenever they saw us gathered on the playground, which really worked too. Through countless warnings, we stayed out on the playground singing Beatles songs from a monthly publication called the Beatles Songbook. Beatles songs, Beatle cards were all that mattered then. Tardy bells ringing, phone bells ringing, always bells ringing, crashing our fantasies and ending our dream.
woke up, got out of bed, dragged a comb across my head. On my way downstairs and drank a cup. Looking up, I noticed I was late. Found my coat and grabbed my hat. Made the bus seconds flat. On my way upstairs and had a smoke. Somebody spoke and I went into a dream.
Damn bells, I thought to myself as I rolled out of my pillow. It was the phone ringing and ringing. I angrily grabbed the receiver off the hook. It was my brother. He didn't hesitate a minute. In a trembling, nervous voice, and very quickly he said, "They shot John Lennon last night." I was speechless. I should have realized something was wrong. His voice sounded the way it did that night he called to tell me that our mom had passed away. I jumped up in the bed. My heart was beating wildly in my chest. I felt hot and sick. I felt for the first time that it was over. Really over.
There are places I remember. Some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some belong, and some remain. All these places have their moments. With lovers and friends, I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I love them all. You're all Dazed, I dropped the phone down to my chin. "I'll call you later today and we'll talk," he said. I felt a certain sensitivity from him that I had never felt before. I hung up the phone and dragged myself from the bed. I was still half asleep and very stunned. I made it to the living room and opened the doors to the record cabinet. I turned the receiver down low for any late-breaking news. I was still half asleep. Then I started pulling Beatle albums out and tossing them on the carpet. I felt lost. I felt that for the first time it was over. Shit, John Lennon was dead. I couldn't believe it. The years rushed back hard against my somber mood, the answered prayers in the Sunday school bathroom, Sundays 3 in a row with my folks watching Ed Sullivan, the recesses of a hard day's night singing Beatles songs and being tardy, Beatle cards, Beatle hopes, Beatle dreams, gone! I was crushed. My youth had slipped away and it hurt. It burned deep into my soul even before I ventured out that day. I knew the world would be dragging itself around. It was a Tuesday that day, and the world was a drag. And then somebody spoke, and I went into a dream.
I read the news today, oh boy. 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. No, the holes were rather small. They had to count them all. Now they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. I'd love to turn you on.
Eddie Baranek on guitar right there from Wayne State University for another week. This is Max Beardsley, our ace bass player with Paul. He's actually got Paul's bass. Max Beardsley. This is Joey Buckalutz, otherwise known as Lou. On the drum. And this is Charlie Palazzola from the Coyote Monk group that I do as well. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it.
This is ML Liebler.
Thank you. So I don't know, has anybody got any questions?
I was gonna say.
Well, wait, does it have the set list from Chase?
It's a replica.
Yeah, it does.
It's a replica of the original.
Paul still has that set list taped on it. Yeah. Hey, how you doing, man?
Well,
I thought I recognized you.
given the historical importance of Beatles music, has anybody ever done any study that they did something different with the pattern of the music? I'm not so much of a music.
Well, you know, the musicians, they did do something very different.
Science to it.
There is a book, I want to say, is it by Wilfred Myers? It came out in the late 60s, maybe, the early 70s.
Oh, right, the classical.
Wilfred Myers, yeah, and it sort of analyzed the Aeolian cadence here, and it lends some, credibility to what they're doing. But I did, I did write some papers, here about taking how the Beatles took Rodgers and Hammerstein, these great musicals and, Jerome Kern and Gershwin and all those guys, Tin Pan Alley guys. They took that, they took R&B from the 50s, they took the girl groups, obviously, their love of Motown.
And John Lennon's mother, the old-time music from the 30s and stuff. Paul McCartney's dad was a ragtime pianist.
Yeah, right. So taking all those styles, which nobody had done. I know
Skiffle. Banjo skiffle stuff.
if you guys know Lonnie Donegan in England, they had Lonnie Donegan instead of Elvis.
And that's what early Beatles had a little, very early in some of this archival footage of the early days, had a skiffle kind of beat to it. But that reminds me, as I was looking around, Bob Koski over here put together all of our videos and shows them wherever we do this in libraries around. So give Bob Koski a hand. He's a very honest guy, but he's really a Beatleologist in many ways. And the one thing I was going to say is, and many of you know this, some don't. Every spring break I do a tour, a study abroad tour here at Wayne, where we go to London and Liverpool. Bob's been a couple of times. We've been doing it for a number of years now. So if you're ever interested, in the fall after school gets started, you can just put Beatles Study Abroad in Wayne's search engine and the page will come up and you can follow it to where you file the app. It's really a reasonable thing, but
Great trip.
the main thing that, Charlie went too, I forgot. You don't have to go to Wayne State, so if you have a friend who wants to come or a sister or brother, I'm sure you probably don't want to bring your parents, but they could come too. No one's done
don't wanna
that
bring
yet,
your
but I'm
kids.
trying to get this guy to
Oh, there's
go.
me, all right.
I'm wearing him down till he goes, because he'd love it. That's Eddie's dad, who's a real Beatle fan.
He's
But
going.
when you go there, you really understand that, talking about the music and everything, this is all really a sense of mysticism and grace in an amazing way that when you go there, you see it. I mean, there is no way in hell this just happened. And it could never happen again that way. I know everybody wants to. American Mars is about as close as it comes nowadays, but
About Jesus.
Jesus comes close. Jesus coming back. But anyway, that's another panel. But at any rate, you really see how all the pieces fit and how John met Paul and Paul brought Harrison and then the Pete Best part and he was gone. I mean, when you see the city of Liverpool, it's kind of a Detroit, only smaller. You see how everybody just lived just so, and everybody just got on the bus at the right time, and it's an amazing, it's really amazing spiritual journey. But on the other side of it, I'm looking
John
at
Lennon's
Pope.
bedroom.
Yeah, and then you can, and Bob got all these illicit photos here.
You were not supposed to be taking pictures.
But I'm glad he did. We went there. You can now go into Paul McCartney's home where he lived until they moved down to London in '63. Must have been. Could have been '64. And '63, I think.
That's the view out.
And that's John Lennon's. And you
That's
can go in
the
Lennon's
view out
house
his bedroom
too.
window.
So when you see all that and everything, it is really truly amazing. But on the music end of it, isn't it true? I mean, isn't it true they play certain chords on it? I was telling Charlie about that.
Well, I was going to speak to James Jamerson. I'm sure most of you guys know the Motown bass player. How it's Jamerson and Paul McCartney going back and forth for this early bass playing, which I'd say before '62, '63 is a lot of Root 5, or you think of music in the late 50s, 60s. I wasn't alive then, but...
He was, sort of.
So you got these four chords, Aren't they gone? So the Beatles took the same chords and go, oh yeah, I'll tell you something. It's the same set of chords, but pop songs coming from, the old tradition, Tin Pan Alley. And to put, I got arms that long to hold you and keep you satisfied. I got lips that long to kiss you. It almost sounds Sinatra-esque in its delivery, but it's, I want to hold your hand and sold to 12-year-old girls. It sounds simple and trite and really basic now today, but for then I think it was pretty advanced.
Yeah, and their music is actually, even stuff like that, is more complicated than it seems to be, And I learned that putting this thing together, this idea, because I figured that the early Beatles stuff would be easy, musicians could do it, but it's not true. It's really difficult.
Like, do you guys know the song Because? Because the world is round. They say, legend goes, who knows, that John Lennon told Yoko to play Moonlight Sonata
by Beethoven,
backwards. And then he goes, oh, wait a minute. Because the world is round, it blows my mind. Because. So they're drawing from all of this, you know, not just Motown and the usual stuff. So.
Other questions that you might want to?
Yes, Dad.
Yes, Dad.
The other Ed Barrett, the original Ed Barrett.
This is
yes.
our manager. This is our Brian Epstein.
Father.
Brian?
You've got 206 recorded Beatles songs. How did you collaborate on the ones 27 that you picked, or how did you come about?
I decided.
When he goes,
What Beatles songs do you know?
we had to start with what Beatles songs do you know. I use Motown and the Beatles as my big, I teach music and I use Motown and the Beatles as the great unifier. Funerals, weddings, people are in a room, they don't, like even Frankie, we're in a room together playing music and it's like, well, I don't know any of that jazz crap. I don't know. Well, wait, what Beatles? Do you know any Motown? Do you know any Beatles? So I use them as unifiers. But back to this, when ML goes, we're driving in the car, and it's like, oh, Beatles, drive my car. Play the riff to tease the riff to drive my car. I went into the church bathroom. Oh, she came in through the
bathroom window.
You know, my dad worked on the line and we didn't have any money, working class. Oh, can't buy me love.
Yeah. They kind of just fit in there like that. I mean, we collaborated on a lot of it, and then some I came to the table with ideas. Like I had the idea of bookending it and in the middle with Day in the Life, because it fits that story, I thought. And it was appropriate. That long, sustained chord at the end is perfect for the end of this story, which, as you know, becomes kind of sad. I mean, it's funny and it's childlike, and then it kind of takes this turn. And so anyway, so that was true. And I did want to start it with, is this mine here?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I did want to start it with some really early Beatles stuff. And I did have the vision of Bob before Bob was even born. I had a vision that Bob would come into my life and see how mystical. No, but I knew Bob Bob is the guy for this. And when I started getting it together, I thought, we got to get Bob, because the first time we did it, we didn't have that, which was in Chelsea. And Bob was working on it then, and I knew he had all these archival pieces to put down. He's really good. So I thought, well, let's add another dimension. And really, because there's a couple of students from my performance class in here. I mean, this is the kind of thing, this is what I would call, Megan, simple performance. But it's kind of choreographed, simple performance. And that would be my example. Not saying this is definitely not Laurie Anderson flying on a razor blade with wings that are real or anything like that. It's music. It's got some video. It's got some fiction in it. Some kind of poetic stuff. So, was there another question? Anybody? I don't know where the Beatles are in things today. I thought maybe, with the younger people, it was starting to fade a little bit, but, it's not.
The Kanye collaboration.
Yeah, Kanye, it was reported that, he made a new record with some old guy that was sort of famous at one time.
When I was in middle school, Across the Universe came out and everyone was
right.
So, yeah.
Through that, and here's just a little thing, because some people don't think the Beatles are important. Well, think of it this way. How many people, 50 years, and I'm not dissing this, but how many people, young people, 50 years after Glenn Miller, were still playing his albums and dancing? No. In fact, I went to a show on Bob Dylan with my son when he was about 10. And I got up to get popcorn, and an old hippie dude doing something illegal next to us leaned over when I was gone. He goes, "What are you doing here, man?" And he said, "I like Bob Dylan." "How do you know Bob Dylan?" He goes, "Well, my dad's into Bob Dylan." He said, "My dad liked Glenn Miller, but I don't listen to that shit." So that's kind of typical. I don't remember. I listen to it a little bit now, but it's not my go-to record. Like, oh, let's pull Lawrence Welk out. No. Or Harry King. I'm not saying they're bad, but listen, the Beatles, you'll hear everywhere still, elevators and they're still, they still sell millions and millions of records and millions of dollars worth of records every year, and it's been freaking 51 years since America. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal.
I think it's unprecedented. Each generation back in the 1900s, 21st century, had their own music, and it just changed with the next generation. This is the first time where you've had the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and the millenniums sort of sharing the same genre, rock and roll, R&B.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, that's the way I look at it.
So I guess we're over our time. Is that? If anybody has any other Beatle questions, Liverpool questions, I am doing a class in the fall that's going to be Detroit and Liverpool. So we're gonna look. I have to talk to you, Judith, about that. It's going to be sort of the Motown class, but we're going to bring in Liverpool as a city and as a cultural city, and Detroit as well, and the music poetry, because there's a whole scene there. In Liverpool, there were the Mersey poets that came out in, when the Beatles did, and. But a famous rock journalist for Mojo magazine who lives in Liverpool and is from there, he told me, he was giving me the lowdown. He said, and this is kind of interesting, Paul the Duke Noir. He said that Liverpool was always a Motown town. They were always in the Motown there. And he said London was more the blues, where the Stones come from and stuff. He said that was more of a blues scene. But any Motown stuff, and then any subsequent, because there is one Motown-ish group that came out of Liverpool called The Right Thing, and they're still around, but they came out doing kind of this, and they did a tribute to Liverpool in a concept album long ago, but they're like Motown sound. They're these African guys who lived in the Dingle area where Ringo grew up, the Texas area where they had their riots, Detroit and all that sort of thing. Interesting stuff.
So let's give them.
Thank you, guys.